The Moriscos, Spain's forgotten ethnic cleansing imagined standing inside the legendary Alhambra. The sound of water fountains echoes through marble halls. Arabic inscriptions cover the walls. The architecture feels alive, like a civilization is still breathing inside these stones. But then, something feels strange. The people who built all of this are gone. Not weakened, not assimilated, gone, almost erased from history. And the reason why leads us to one of the darkest stories in European history, the story of the Moriscos, a people who were forced to hide their religion, abandon their language, and eventually face mass expulsion from Spain itself. So today, let's travel back to medieval Andalusia, because to understand the Moriscos, we first need to understand the world they lost. The rise of Andalusia. In the year 711 AD, a relatively small Muslim force crossed the Strait of Gibraltar into the Iberian Peninsula. Within only a few years, Muslim rule spread across most of what is now Spain and Portugal. Now, historians debate exactly how this happened so quickly. Some sources describe it as a military conquest. Others argue it looked more like a rapid transfer of power during a period of political collapse inside the region. One controversial historian, Ignacio Olagüe, even argued that the Muslim arrival in Spain was less an invasion and more a transformation of authority inside an already unstable society. Whatever interpretation you accept, one thing is undeniable. Andalusia became one of the most advanced societies of the Middle Ages. And in many periods, Muslims, Christians, and Jews lived together under a system some historians later called convivencia, coexistence. Cordoba, the City of Light. By the year 950 AD, Cordoba had become one of the greatest cities in Europe. Its population may have reached 500,000 people. At a time when cities like Paris and London were dramatically smaller, Cordoba had paved streets, libraries, hospitals, public baths, and advanced irrigation systems. And this civilization was built by people from different religions working together. One of the most famous figures was Abu al-Qasim al-Zahrawi, known in some sources as the father of modern surgery. He developed hundreds of surgical instruments, many of which inspired tools still used today. Meanwhile, Christian scholars translated ancient Greek medical texts into Arabic, helping preserve and spread classical knowledge. For a time, Andalusia became a rare example of intellectual cooperation in medieval Europe, but history rarely stays peaceful for long. The collapse of Andalusia. In 1031, the Umayyad Caliphate of Cordoba collapsed after internal conflicts. Andalusia fragmented into dozens of competing kingdoms known as the Taifa kingdoms. Instead of uniting against external threats, many rulers fought each other constantly. At the same time, Christian kingdoms in northern Spain were growing stronger. Kingdoms like Castile and Aragon expanded southward year after year during what became known as the Reconquista. Over time, Andalusia weakened economically, politically, and culturally. Even famous intellectuals suffered. The philosopher Ibn Rushd was exiled. The Jewish philosopher Maimonides fled Andalusia entirely. By 1238, only one major Muslim kingdom remained, the Kingdom of Granada. Granada, the last Muslim kingdom. Granada survived for over 2 centuries thanks to geography, diplomacy, and political maneuvering. But eventually, 2 powerful Christian kingdoms united through marriage. Ferdinand II of Aragon married Isabella I of Castile. Together, Castile and Aragon became the dominant powers of Spain. And while Spain united against Granada, Granada itself was collapsing from internal civil war. Members of the ruling family fought each other for power while Spanish armies closed in. Finally, after a brutal siege, Granada surrendered in 1491. The surrender treaty actually looked surprisingly generous. Muslims were promised freedom of religion. Mosques would remain open. Islamic courts would continue functioning. People could keep their language and customs. For a brief moment, it seemed coexistence might survive, but that peace would not last. The birth of the Moriscos. A powerful church figure named Francisco Jimenez de Cisneros rejected the idea of tolerance. He believed Muslims should convert to Christianity by force if necessary. Muslim religious leaders were imprisoned. Arabic books were burned publicly. Conversions became increasingly coercive. Then came the turning point. In 1499, unrest exploded in Granada after Spanish authorities tried arresting Muslims in the Albaicin district. The revolt was crushed, and afterward Spain abandoned the original treaty protections. Muslims were now given two choices: convert to Christianity or leave Spain. Most could not leave. Travel was expensive, property could not be taken, money and gold were forbidden. Piracy filled the Mediterranean, so hundreds of thousands stayed. Outwardly, they became Christians. Secretly, many remained Muslim. These people became known as the Moriscos. Living a double life, the Moriscos entered one of the strangest and most dangerous existences in European history. Publicly, they attended church. They adopted Spanish names. They dressed like Christians. But privately, many still prayed in secret, fast during Ramadan, teach Islam to their children, hide Qurans inside walls and ceilings. A famous religious ruling known as the Oran Fatwa even advised Muslims how to survive under persecution. If forced to renounce Islam publicly, they could lie to protect themselves. If unable to pray openly, they could pray secretly. If forced to break Islamic rules under threat, survival came first. The Moriscos essentially became an underground civilization hiding inside Spain itself. But then came one of the most feared institutions in European history, the Spanish Inquisition. The Spanish Inquisition. The Spanish Inquisition was originally created in 1478. At first, it targeted converted Jews and Christian heretics, but eventually the Moriscos became major targets. The Inquisition operated through fear, surveillance, and torture. Spies listened for suspicious behavior, someone bathing too often, avoiding pork, speaking Arabic, or wearing unfamiliar clothing could become a suspect. Interrogations often involved brutal torture methods designed to force confessions. People accused of secretly practicing Islam could face imprisonment, confiscation of property, or execution. Some were burned alive publicly during ceremonies known as auto da fe, acts of faith. Entire communities lived in constant fear. Yet, despite all this pressure, many Moriscos continued preserving their identity in secret. The Morisco Revolt. In 1568, after Spain banned Arabic language and many traditional customs, Morisco frustration finally exploded. A rebellion began in the mountainous Alpujarras region. Thousands joined the uprising. For a moment, the rebels achieved victories against local Spanish forces, but King Philip II of Spain responded with overwhelming military force. Villages were destroyed. Massacres spread across the countryside. Families were separated and displaced. Eventually, the rebellion collapsed from internal divisions and betrayals, and afterward, Spain decided the Morisco problem would never be tolerated again. The final expulsion. In 1609, under Philip III of Spain, Spain ordered the mass expulsion of the Moriscos. Hundreds of thousands were forced onto ships and deported. Families lost homes, farms, businesses, and generations of history. Many died during the journey. Some ships sank. Others were attacked by pirates. Some refugees were robbed before even reaching North Africa. And when many Moriscos finally arrived in places like Morocco, Algeria, or Tunisia, they discovered something heartbreaking. They no longer fully belonged there either. They spoke Spanish. Their clothing and customs had changed. Many locals viewed them as foreigners. The Moriscos had lost Spain, but they had also become strangers elsewhere. Spain's hidden loss. At first, many Spanish leaders celebrated the expulsion, but the consequences soon became obvious. Spain had expelled a huge part of its skilled workforce. Farmers disappeared, artisans disappeared, silk industries collapsed, agriculture suffered heavily in regions like Valencia and Aragon. Over time, Spain entered economic decline while other European powers advanced. Meanwhile, Morisco communities slowly integrated into North Africa and other parts of the Muslim world. Even today, traces of Andalusian architecture, agriculture, music, and cuisine remain across the region. And modern genetic studies suggest many Spaniards still carry Morisco ancestry from families that secretly remained behind. The legacy of the Moriscos. The story of the Moriscos is not only about religion, it is about identity, assimilation, fear, power, and what happens when a state tries to erase difference by force. For a brief moment, Andalusia showed that multiple cultures could contribute to the same civilization, but later generations chose fear over coexistence. And in the end, Spain did not simply expel a minority, it expelled part of itself, because civilizations are rarely weakened by diversity. More often, they are weakened when they destroy the very people helping them thrive. And that is why the story of the Moriscos still matters today.